Two Worlds, One Family by Dragon Translator. Chapter 19. It sounds like slavery to me. They found Gyda sitting on her robe in a meadow, not far from the dragon nip Hiccup and Toothless had inadvertently discovered while learning to fly. Shadowfire lay nearby in the middle of a sunbeam. The dragon was upon his back, legs tucked against his body. Both wings lay on the ground, stretched to their limits, and his neck and tail lay along the ground, straight from either end of him. Both the dragon and the mother had their eyes closed. Shadowfire's eyes snapped open when Toothless and Stormfly landed. Gyda's did not. Shadowfire rolled onto his paws. He bowed to Hiccup before rearing back onto his hind legs and jerking one of his forelegs back and forth. Hiccup frowned, not quite understanding. Toothless tilted his head but walked over, Stormfly following. That apparently was what Shadowfire wanted, because he lowered himself onto his front half and lay down once more. He did not roll onto his back and kept his head off the ground this time, moving it closer to Hiccup. "Mother's meditating," he whispered. "She often does this. It's something mages have to do. When we were younger, Frost and I would play outside when she had to do this. Now I just take a nap." "Ah," Hiccup whispered. "Will she be long? I kinda need to talk to her." Shadowfire lifted and lowered his curled wings, like he had done back in Gyda's home while they watched those images. Hiccup frowned. Everyone turned as a light glowed from where Gyda sat. Hiccup's eyes widened. He glanced at Astrid, finding her staring wide-eyed as well. Toothless gave a soft chuff. Sharpshot gave a tiny chirp. Stormfly chittered. Shadowfire hummed. She did not have to meditate long this time. But then she has not really used much of her magic in the past few days. "What does meditating do?" Hiccup asked. "It levels out my magic," Gyda said, opening her eyes and staring at him. "It also restores my strength." "Your strength?" Hiccup asked, dismounting. "Magic is a wondrous and powerful tool," Gyda said, "but it has a cost, as does much in life. This cost, though, is my strength. Each time I use magic, I, in effect, weaken myself. Meditating helps restore my strength, along with eating properly, exercising regularly, and sleeping well." Hiccup froze. "Can you die from using your magic?" "Yes, if I use too much without recharging myself. I can weaken myself to the point my body cannot go on." Gyda tilted her head. "I don't plan on doing that anytime soon." "I should hope not," Shadowfire said, moving to lie down in a half-circle behind and as close to Gyda as he could. "My mother isn't going anywhere," he added, nuzzling her. Hiccup moved over, sitting down in front of Gyda. Astrid joined him, sitting at his left side. Toothless, Stormfly and Sharpshot lay down around them, completing the circle Shadowfire had started. "You said you'd explain what you meant yesterday about me controlling your magic," Hiccup said. "Can you do that now? 'Cause I'm confused about something." Gyda smiled. "Of course. Here would be perfect. Your friends are not here. I could not explain with them present." "But I'm here," Astrid said. "Aye," Gyda replied. "But you and Hiccup are courting, and should your courtship follow the path to marriage, this will affect you as well." Gyda took a deep breath and then snorted. "I was going to say long ago, but this has not even happened yet, given the time I'm in now." She chuckled and shook her head. "Timelines. Anyway, it was once decided that a magic wielder could choose a liege lord or lady if they so preferred. But they could only ever have one in their lifetime. Choosing a liege, in effect, bound that magic wielder to the surface of the liege." "That sounds like slavery!" Hiccup cried. I know, but it wasn't. A liege could only ever order a magic wielder in regards to their magic. They could never enforce other whims upon the magic wielder. A liege could also never buy or sell the allegiance of a magic wielder. We weren't slaves to our lieges, more like sworn soldiers or warriors. Our weapons were just of a different make." "Still sounds like slavery to me," Hiccup muttered. Gyda smiled. That you feel so strongly about this is why I know I am safe in swearing myself to your service. I know you will not abuse the authority you wield. Why was this a practice to begin with? Astrid asked. Gyda shrugged. I don't know the exact details of why it started. I do know it was not a law, but a common enough practice. She frowned. Which is why that noble did all that he did. What do you mean? Hiccup asked. Gyda sighed. I never chose a liege. That noble wanted my allegiance, and each time he asked or made comments about it, I always refused him. I found out later, by going through some of Dad's things, that the noble once even approached him about me choosing a liege. Dad threatened to expose the noble as he spoke of giving my father money. Gyda paused. A week later, we were sent a letter from the king. It was now illegal for humans to bond with rare dragons, given that both the dragon and the human died if one or the other died. It all sounded good, and I'm sure those who wrote the law and endorsed it to the king thought they were doing a good thing. But I knew what was going on. You said the noble did all that. Aye. The kingdom was fine with my father having a bond with Umbra, until my father refused that noble and threatened to expose him. That noble had many friends in the palace, most of whom were advisors to the king. So that noble got the law changed to get back at your father? Astrid said. I believe so. I have no proof, and thus could not do anything to avenge my father or Umbra. He kept at it, I take it. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, Hiccup said. Gyda's face hardened. He went after my children. He knew I would do anything, kill anyone to keep my kids safe. Shadowfire and Frostfire species are too common for him to invoke that law. So he worked to have my land taken from me. No land and no home, and I could be viewed as an unfit mother to my children. Where does swearing yourself to me come into all of this? Hiccup asked. Your gods knew of what was going on. In exchange for allowing them to move you all into my home and show you those images, I would be allowed to live my life here, away from that noble. That explains why you're here, but not the swearing yourself to me. Gyda laughed. Remember I said your tale was once thought made up? Yes? When it was thought as such, it was a favourite tale of mine. I have seen those images multiple times. And as I said back in my dining hall, you and Toothless were always my favourite characters. And I said before even starting those images, I respect you, Hiccup. I know swearing myself to your service will not be the servitude that noble wished for me. But you're here and not there, Hiccup protested. You don't have to follow those rules or customs anymore. Gyda smiled. I know. However, I still swear myself to your service. I am your mage, Hiccup, until my life is done. Once I've sworn this, I can't unswear it. Hiccup groaned. I can't control you or your magic. I don't know the first thing about it. Hiccup, you already control the dragons, and one day you will control the hairy hooligan tribe. Think of this in the same regard. You will lead the dragons. You will lead the Vikings. You will lead me now. Hiccup groaned again and ran his hand over his face. Why? Why is this so important? Do you see that tree stump to the far side of the meadow? Gyda asked, pointing behind Shadowfire's head. Shadowfire lifted his neck so everyone could look. Gyda lifted her hand, lightning curling around her fingers. She pointed to the stump. Lightning shot from her finger. The stump exploded. She snapped her fingers, and a familiar barrier winked into existence, shielding them from the debris. Hiccup's jaw dropped. Astrid whistled. The dragons, except Shadowfire, gave startled coos and chirps. In defense of their liege, a magic wielder is as deadly as any trained warrior. In a war, a magic wielder can take out many enemy combatants before they even have a chance to reach their objective. As my liege, I am sworn to fight at your side and defend you with my life, Hiccup. I do this because you are worthy of it. Hiccup faced her. You... Why? Gita smiled. Because, as I said, I respect you greatly, Hiccup. You said this would affect me if Hiccup and I marry. Astrid said, and Hiccup felt his cheeks warm despite the seriousness of the conversation. He once dreamed about marrying Astrid, long before he shot Toothless down. The dream had followed along until the birth of their son, before the sun's light and his father stomping downstairs woke him. He remembered being ill-tempered the entire day, because he knew the dream would never come true. Now, it could if Astrid did not regret her decision and walked away from their courtship. Something a part of him feared would happen anyway. Should you and Hiccup marry, and for whatever reason Hiccup is not around to give an order regarding my magic, I will obey you, Astrid. I will also guard you and any children you two may have with my life. What happens if Hiccup dies? Toothless said. Of old age, mind you, because I'm not letting my brother die before that. Gita snickered. If I still live, Astrid becomes my liege. If she also dies, their oldest child becomes my liege. I will still guard any other children they have, but the oldest will be the one I obey. What about your kids? Astrid asked. Are they bound to this? Dragons do not choose lieges, Gita said, smirking. They follow alphas, and my children follow Hiccup. Human children? Astrid clarified with a snort. If I marry and have human children who become mages, they are not bound by my pledge. They would be free to choose a liege, or none at all. But that is a big if. I have my kids. I'm not looking for more. Shadowfire purred and nuzzled against Gita. I wouldn't mind a little brother or sister. Give Frost and Pale some time, son. You'll have nieces and nephews. Can I have both? Gita stared at her son as if he had two heads. Shadowfire just smiled and nuzzled against her. Silly one, she muttered. She stared at Hiccup. You once asked what I study in. I can fight using lightning, fire, and frost as my main weapons. I am better with the lightning, mostly because I have sons who use the other elements. I can create barriers to shield against such attacks, and if pressed I can create a barrier to stop solid weapons. Like what? Anything you can think of, actually. The barrier would prevent anything from touching who or whatever is behind the barrier. Is that all? I know only the most basic of healing spells. The one I used for the young nightmare. If you are ever in pain or have a small cut, I can help. Much more than that. You'll be best heading for Gothi. I could also create illusions, which make people believe something is real when it is not. I am sorry, though, I cannot turn wood into gold. Shadowfire snorted. Man, that joke only works for those who know the reference. They won't. Bah! Gita said. I somehow get the weirdest feeling Snotlout will think I can do that and try to convince me it's a grand idea. You have a point there. Gita snickered and then looked at Hiccup. You said you were confused by something. What? Mildew. Hiccup said. He said he heard my dad, but you shook your head when I looked at you. I didn't give him back his memories. He was not in the plaza when I arrived, nor was he in the air when I unblocked those dragon's memories. So he was just outside the Great Hall when Dad disowned me, Hiccup said softly. He must have been at the arena and followed Dad and I. He's never liked me, Hiccup said, looking down at the grass. He would always tell me that Dad should have put me to sea when I was a baby. Never where Dad could hear him, though. He heard the dragons growl, but his head jerked up when Astrid hissed. He looked over, finding her eyes narrowed and her hands wrapped around the hilt of her axe blade. He reached over and placed a hand upon her other arm. She stared at him, face twisted in a snarl for a heartbeat, before her face softened, and she laid her axe down in order to grip his hand in both of hers. Hiccup smiled, staring at her for several heartbeats before looking at Gita once more. Will you ever give him back his memories? Not unless you order me to. You and those in the plaza, as well as the dragons that accompanied you to my home, had to have their memories unblocked, so I acted without orders. Now that you know you are my liege, and what I'm capable of, if you wish for someone's memories unblocked, then I will obey the order. I do advise you to think carefully on who gets their memories. Dog's Breath was unfortunately in the plaza, and now is probably on his way to Outcast Island. Hiccup sighed. Right, I understand. He frowned. You said Umbra was a rare dragon. What was his species? Gyda tilted her head and then looked at Toothless. A night fury, she said. Umbra means shadow. Dad thought it was funny to name a black dragon that. She looked over at Shadowfire. He's named for Umbra, actually. The shadow part of his name is in honour of their uncle. Shadowfire purred and nuzzled his mother. Uncle Umbra helped Frost and I learn our wings, since Mum could not fly. He also taught us how to control our breath attacks, and how to fight with our claws and tails. Night Furies are rare in the future too? Hiccup asked. Toothless cooed. My kind do not have big clutches of eggs like others, brother. Each mated pair may have 4 offspring in their lifetime, though I have heard of rare occasions where 6 happened. I do not find it all that surprising that my kind is still considered rare, even in the time she's from. Hiccup stared at Toothless. Does that mean you have brothers and sisters out there too? I have an older brother and a younger sister. If Mother and Father had any others, I don't know. I left to explore not long after I became a youngling. Hiccup frowned, glancing at Toothless's tail. Toothless grunted and nuzzled against Hiccup's frame. Brother, do not feel guilt over this. We've spoken about it, and I've forgiven you. Besides, this means if we do find any of my previous flock, you will be there to meet them as well. But... Hiccup began, only to gag and jerk his head away as Toothless licked him. Gah! Toothless! Got you thinking of something else, didn't I? Hiccup harumphed, glaring at his dragon brother. Toothless gave him a gummy smile and cooed before nuzzling him again. Hiccup sighed, and then frowned. What will your parents think of the one who named their son? He asked. They will not like it any more than I did at the time, brother. But they will understand when I explain. Once they get to know you, they will understand why I follow you and call you my alpha. You're more confident about that than I, Hiccup muttered. I know my parents, brother. They will not hold a grudge when they know the reasoning behind the act. My younger sister may, however, take longer to accept what has happened. She is fiercer than Astrid when your intended is protecting you. Astrid snorted. I doubt that, but I'll take your word for it, Toothless. Toothless chuckled. Hiccup looked up and grunted. Come on, he said. I think Dad will be looking for us to go and help the fishermen and women, now that people have had a chance to trade with Johann. Everyone stood. Hiccup mounted Toothless, his terror brother clinging to his back once more. Astrid retrieved her axe and then climbed onto Shadowfire. Gyda used Shadowfire's offered foreleg to climb onto his saddle. The dragons took to the skies, banking around to fly towards Burke's docks. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I like that Hiccup is like this. He sees everyone as equal and everyone as free, and God, I'm with Gyda, I so respect him. To be honest, I keep saying it, but Astrid and Hiccup are the healthiest couple I've seen in animated history in recent memory. Heck, they might be healthier than Poppy and Branch, because they listen to each other more. But that's very, very close, very close. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I upload a new video. Check out my other channel and make sure to have a good day, night or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.